What happened to my property after 6 years? Hello everyone, welcome back to Novarise, your channel for real estate education. So today we're going to talk about what I decided to do with my very first rental. So for those who have been tuning in for quite some time, you probably remember an episode that I released a couple of months ago where I talked about my very first unit. I went back to Alabama and I visited, and I was actually giving everybody a tour. And then towards the end, I asked, what is it that I should be doing with this apartment? So today's episode, it's all about that apartment and what I decided to do with it at the end. I actually got overwhelming responses from all of you sharing tips as to what I should be doing with that unit. And for that, I am very grateful for you. Now, the answers that I got were a very close call for one another. So what I want to do in this episode is actually walk you through my thinking process and show you how I arrived to the conclusion as to what is it that I decided to do. So let's go ahead and start, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button right here. Now, just to share a bit of a refresher, when we talked about what to do with the unit, we ended up with 4 different options, right? So we have option 1, and that is sell the unit as is, right? Not do anything with it. Option 2 was to rent the unit as is. And then option 3 is to do renovation and sell for a gain of $10,000. And the fourth option was to do the renovation and then rent it out, right? So if I were to sell the unit as is, the selling price was $135,000. And then if I did the renovation, we would have gotten a gain of an additional $10,000. And that means that the selling price of that unit would have been $145,000, right? So now what I want to do is just to run the numbers to show you how everything looks in real life and what approach you should be taking when it comes to you doing the math or doing the calculations to decide what's the best solution for you, right? So we talked about option 1, and that is selling it as is, right, for $135,000. So the way I did the math was the following, right? So I need to see what is it that was going to be my gain all the way towards the end after I sell the unit. So I have to deduct the initial investment of $90,000, right? So that's how much the apartment cost me initially. And then after that, I also need to account for the realtor fees, right? Because they charge their commission for helping me sell the unit. And then at the same time, I also need to include closing costs, right? Because we all have to pay that. How do I get to that number? This is just basically an estimate. A realtor will charge me 6% to help me sell the unit, and approximately 5% of the sale price will go towards closing costs. So when you do the math and you deduct all of those expenses, you will only end up with a gain of $30,150. So that's okay, not so bad. But then when you divide this by 6 years, which is how long I've been holding the property, you will wind up with a yearly gain of $5,025 per year, right? So it looks good, but can we go more into details as to what is it truly the value of this number? So what I wanted to do is just to get more in details, like $5,025 a year for 6 years. That seems all right. But how much was I really making on a monthly basis? So I took this $5,025 and I divided by 12. And what I got was a gain of $418.75. So that's how much I made per month by holding this apartment for a period of 6 years. But what happened? If I sell this, I will no longer be making $418.75, right? But hey, it's not bad, right? For initial investment of $90,000. But then I decided, I need to dig deeper and try to figure out what other options do I have, right? So the next option I consider was what would happen if I decide to just rent the apartment as is, meaning not doing any renovations and continue to charge a rent of $900. So the numbers will look like the following. If I'm charging a rent of $900, that means 10% will go towards property management. So that will be $90. Then I will have to also pay my HOAs, my homeowners association, every single month. And then I also have to pay for the mortgage, right? Because I recently refinanced out of it. I did a cash out refi. So the new mortgage is now $604.73. So when you minus all of these numbers, I wind up with a cash flow of only $29.27. It's okay, but definitely not good, especially with inflation, right? Because it doesn't really look good. Now, I want to make a point here because sometimes I know that depending on the lender that you have, you'll have a mortgage amount. Sometimes you'll have to include the property taxes and stuff like that. The way this mortgage here was set up, it's meant to include the principal, which is the debt, interest, and it also includes escrow, which already includes property taxes and insurance, which is why I'm only including this one whole lump sum and not other expenses. So back to the point of the cash flow, $29.27. That's not ideal, especially in times of inflation and especially, because accidents do happen. Sometimes you need a last minute maintenance, and making $29.27 was definitely not the best investment or the best cash flow to get, right? So then I went ahead and I said, well, I mean, some of the comments did talk about doing the renovation, but if I do proceed with the renovation, what should I do after the renovation is done? Should I really sell the unit and, try to do a 1031 exchange, or should I, maybe just keep it, right, with me? And so this is what happens. So first, what we need to figure out is how much did the renovation really cost. Now, back in the old video, the budget that I got out of my property manager is that, doing the entire renovation will cost approximately $5,000. But now that we have real number, let's just run those numbers together so that you can actually see how much does it truly cost. So first item on the list to consider, so we got cabinet/vanity, and that were 3. And that ended up costing $1,189.22, right? Then we got the granite countertops, right? Plus the sink. And that wind up costing $1,792.90. Then we had the appliances, right? And so in the appliances, I am including a dishwasher. I am also including the oven. I am also including a microwave, and then I also have the fridge. And that wind up costing a total of $2,799.50. Now, when you add all of these numbers up, you wind up with a total of $5,781.62, which was pretty close to the original budget. If you compare that to the numbers of the old video, he said 5,000, but with everything that's going on with inflation and then the lack of materials, the demand, everyone trying to buy stuff and, not having enough merchandise available, I kind of anticipated that there was going to be some type of a premium that I needed to pay. But eventually, what I didn't completely anticipate was that there was going to be labor involved in it. I kind of knew, but I didn't really factor that in until I got the bill. So there was additional work that needed to be done in terms of carpentry and then overall labor because the kitchen was a little bit outdated. So we needed to change some of the handles. We needed a new coat of paint. So that required work. And the total cost of that labor ended up costing $3,778 because, labor is really expensive in the US, especially in times of inflation, because currently nobody wants to work. It's actually cheaper to stay home than to go out and work. The stimulus flowing in, you kind of get it, right? So when you added all of that together, you wind up with a total renovation cost of $9,560. Okay, this is why I always say that it is important to have reserve funds because things always run above budget. You can, be as calculative as possible, just like I did with the cabinets. I literally went store by store locally in Alabama checking for the best prices possible. And I even drove around just to make sure I was getting the best deal. And even then, something like this come up with labor, and it is what it is. You have to pay for it, right? So now that you know the overall cost of the renovation, let's move on to the actual numbers. And that was with option 3, right? So now the real deal. Let's run the numbers with the cost of renovation included. So we said in the prior video that if I were to sell this unit with renovation, the cost of the unit will be $145,000, which means I will make an additional $10,000 in comparison to this price. So $145,000, and the renovation cost me $9,560. So when I realized that, there was not even a point of doing the math, because if I'm only making a gain of $10,000 and my renovation is costing me $9,560, like you see here on this screen, that means that I will be doing all of that work, all of the crazy renovation, dealing with closings, dealing with an appraisal, dealing with the lenders, all of that just to make an additional $440,000, which, if you come to think of it, is not even enough to cover my realtor fees and not even enough to cover my closing costs. So this was not an option. This is no good, right? So then I ended up with one last option, and that is, hey, what if I rent it? So guess what happened? A miracle happened, right? But before I tell you about it, if you're enjoying this episode, do not forget to hit the like button right here at the bottom so you can help this episode rank and help others like you who are looking for information of this kind, right? So by the time the renovation was over, I got great news. So there was a vacant land right across my complex, and there was a developer that came in town and decided to, just build luxury condos on that land. So by the time that announcement was made, my renovation was officially over. So originally, my property manager told me that the rent for that unit renovated would have been somewhere between the range of $1,000 to $1,100, right? But because of those news, we had a new builder in town, and now the area right across my building complex will now have luxury condos. The rent on that property, just because of that, went up all the way to $1,200, which might not seem much if you look at it, but hey, this is passive income we're talking about. So we're having here a new rent of $1,200. And by that, these are the following expenses, right? So because my property manager charges a 10%, now we're talking about $120 on a monthly basis on property management fees, right? Now, in terms of HOA, I haven't heard about anything changing, so we still are going to include $176 as the amount. And then, of course, the mortgage is fixed, so we're talking about $673. And when we do the math here all together, I wind up with a cash flow of $299.27, okay? So now we're talking. We have $299 over here, or $29.27. Well, I actually prefer this number a lot better, right? So $299.27 on a monthly basis. When you multiply that number by 12, we're talking about $3,591.24 yearly, passively, as a cash flow. This is how much I'll be making passively. That's amazing. So if I want to take this a little deeper, now I want to see what's my real return with the renovation, right? So my cash on cash return will be the following. For those who want to know what cash on cash is the return on the cash that I invested. And that it's obtained by dividing the cash flow by the cash invested. So my cash invested was $3,591.24. And the amount that I invested on the renovation was $9,560. And that will give me a whopping 38% return. Woohoo! That's excellent. How do I know that's good? So the way I like to run my numbers is that if I'm getting a 20% return, that is a good investment. And anything above 30, right? We're talking about an excellent investment. And 38% looks pretty good for me. And if I want to take this one step further, let's just take into account how long will it take me to recuperate my money. So I'm going to divide $9,560 by my cash flow, right? And that means it will take me approximately 2.5 years to recuperate my money. Okay, that's nothing. 2.5 years passively. My last tenant stayed at my unit for 6 years. So 2.5 years is nothing. Yes, and I understand my tenant can move, but hey, it's located in a great location. And I have no doubt that that unit is going to be rented in no time. And because of this is why I decided to stay with number 4. And that's renting the unit at $1,200 and continue to cash flow on this property. Now, for those who are actually looking to learn more about this type of calculation, how to run the numbers so you know that you're actually looking at a great deal, I have put together a free webinar that you can sign up. Yes, it's free. It won't cost you anything. All you got to do is just to block out time on a day that works best for you and make sure you show up with a notebook and pen so you can go ahead and take notes and learn about how I do these calculations a lot more in depth. So here's the link. Once again, make sure you signed up for it and I'll be seeing you at the webinar. Take care. Bye-bye.